Anybody with even a remote understanding of product management, or what the purpose of Python is versus what the purpose of HTML is versus what the purpose of CSS is. Like, you don't have to know how to read or write those things. You just have to understand on a high level how these things work together. If you have a vision and a role in the market, you can make yourself more efficient or smarter very, very easily with AI. And so what are the moats then? Like, what are the things that defend you from competition? It's number one, are you somebody worth trusting? Are you somebody worth caring about? Do you have actual relationships with people in the space that you're doing work? Used to be, it was the person with the best tech got the work. So like, you'd have these ERP companies in these industries, and the people running them maybe have nothing to do with that industry, but because they built the tech, they're the leader and they're the thought leader. Now it's like, okay, you built the tech and it's expensive, but I could do that myself. So who cares? Like, I need somebody who's actually a thought leader who understands the market and has some rapport with it. And then number two, how do I deploy what I have? Like, whatever services I'm selling or products or whatever, how do I get from I know people in the market to they're looking at my stuff? So SEO and just the thought of thought leadership is going to be more crucial now than ever.
Hey there, Mr. Ryan Brock. What is it? Bald Guys edition of Marketing in the Raw. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, man. I'm feeling like I don't have enough, stuff in my background to match the vibe the Bald Guys doing marketing to talk about. I'm looking at like a in the box Lego Thanos' gauntlet sitting right over there, so I could get a little bit closer to you if I take the time to build it.
Yeah, I don't know. I've got a philosophy around Legos. Like, when I was a kid, I loved playing with Legos, but they were just the blocks. Like, they're just a bunch of blocks. Now it's like you go out and you buy very specific blueprints to put them together, and it feels like if you don't put them together as they are intended, you're not using them the way they're supposed to be, but then you're not really being as creative and fun, I think, as Legos are supposed to be used.
Well, I've got a 5-year-old son, so right up here in the upstairs of my house, I've got my office where I keep like the Legos I've built that are fun. Like, I've got, I don't know if you can see it in the video, maybe future, I've got like a probe droid, Star Wars probe droid right there. But then we've also got a big old table full of blocks in his room that we could just like build stuff with, which is fun. Because, at this point, he's probably got like 40 sets mixed together. They'll never be unmixed, so we can just do whatever we want.
I was about to say, if you lose, about 10 pieces for some of those, then you immediately become, immediately just gets turned into a pile of new blocks that you could use in the collective pile.
Yeah, I had the big Saturn V Apollo rocket, and when my son was a child, or like a baby, he knocked it over and broke it and stole some of the pieces, and so that's like a $400 set that's just done forever, which is nice, a good investment.
Well, speaking of building and, piecing things together and all that, we're going to talk a little bit about some stuff. Like, Ryan, I've known you for a while. I've always enjoyed talking with you, and you've been nice enough to include me in to some of the stuff that you've done in the past where you and I were working together. We'll dig in a little bit to your history, as a former agency owner, but we were working together at a solutions company that you were a part of. How did you get into marketing? Were you born to be a marketer, or did you just immediately popped out and said, marketing is your first words? What happened?
I think I was born to be a storyteller and an artist. Like, if you look at my childhood, where a lot of kids like tried soccer and didn't like it, so then they tried basketball and didn't like it, so then they tried football and then whatever, then they landed there. I did all that, but I also did like extracurricular art classes on the weekends. So I'd be like 7 years old going to like still life oil pastel classes for 3 hours at a time. And I did a lot of like comic book art, and I've been a musician. The only job I ever had as an adult, other than starting my agency and going down the path that set me on, was teaching guitar to people at a studio, to kids mostly. So, music, art, writing. I'm an English major. I wanted to write stories. That's why I went to school. When I went to school, I was like, I want to write stories. I want to tell stories. And like, I think writing became the thing that I really started wanting to build a career on in my college days, because in college, that's what you're doing, right? You're writing papers, and I was really good at it. Like, I was the kid that, like, all my friends hated, because I could just, like, the night before read a book, then go write an A+ essay on it and turn it in and, you know, be done with it. So, like, I was only engaged in my studies, like, half the time, because I could just do that really quickly. So the writing was something that I had been working on the most recently, even though I, you know, still in college, played in bands and did other stuff like that. And so that's sort of what I pursued. I got out of school back in the Great Recession. I graduated from college in 2010. So all of the jobs that, you know, usually like English and philosophy majors like me are used to having to accept were being taken by people with good degrees that couldn't find work, because nobody could find a job back then, right out of college. So I was just like, what am I supposed to do here, man? So I was teaching some guitar, and started working on a digital publishing startup with a couple of friends who were developers and designers, to try to get some attention on my writing as I was going out and, you know, pitching to agents, trying to get a book deal. I was publishing short fiction in magazines and things like that. And that just, I mean, we don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but that got me learning about the business world, talking to marketers, and learning how I could, you know, become a better writer or a more successful one based on that. And the way that I would learn from people is I'd write really flattering stories about them. I'd write interviews about them. I'd be, hey, I want to interview you for my blog. Really, I just want to learn. You know what I mean? But do that enough times for free. Eventually someone's like, hey, you're pretty good at this. Do you want some money? So for me, there was a guy named Mohammed Yassin back in the day. We started working together when he was at a medical insurance company, and some colleagues of his, Brian Swim and my best friend Josh Littlejohn, all working there, and started doing email content and blogs and all this stuff. And I'd never heard of it, never thought about it. Like, marketing in general wasn't something that I'd ever done, but I'd been out on my own from, you know, graduated from college for about a year, and someone started offering me money to write. And so I'm like, of course I want to do this. Yes. So I think I came into it with like a writer, like an author's perspective, you know, not like a marketer's perspective. And they were just loving the content that I was producing. And within 3 or 4 months, they were like, listen, we're working with a ton of different like freelance writers, agencies. If you had more capacity, we would give you all of our work. And I just, you know, being like 22, 23, was like, that's awesome. I can go get my other friends who are graduating with creative writing degrees and English degrees right now work, because we can all be doing this. And so I started my agency with Autonomy Media like that, and kind of right out the gate had an office and started hiring people, and, you know, made a lot of mistakes because I didn't know what I was doing. But no, I landed in marketing because I wanted to tell stories and I wanted to get paid to be a writer. And, you know, fast forward 15 years, here I am.
Wow. So I didn't know those things about you. At what point do you remember the moment where you went from, oh, this isn't just writing, this is marketing? Like, there's some element of, you know, like switching over from that sort of creative, I'm doing guitar, I'm creatively writing, to there's a business function. Like, one is for expression, maybe a little bit of artistic expression and telling these great stories, to these stories, or what I'm doing is serving a business function.
Well, I kind of learned on the job, just being the executor and writing, right? So like the publishing startup that I was working on, the idea originally was just like, my friend who's a UX UI designer is like, hey, do you want like a cool web app that can be a portfolio for your work? And you got to remember, this is like 2010, right? So this is back when like having a rich, interactive, responsive HTML5 website was like nice, right? This was like cutting edge stuff, and for a writer to do that would have been cool. And me being me and seeing opportunities to help people, I'm like, dude, if you're going to do this for me, we could do this for other people too. And it really quickly went from, well, if we're building this utility to display this work really cool, we could also just publish the work and help writers get analytics on like their readership, which would then be useful in going and pitching to publishers, to agents, that sort of thing. So I thought, like, very quickly it went from being about me doing that for myself to being like, I can help writers that, like, the publishing industry, which at the time was fresh out of a lot of turbulence as they were moving from a purely print business to digital publishing taking over and being sort of owned by like Apple and Amazon and Borders and all these big, you know, companies that weren't publishers really. But it was a turbulent time, and it was a time where I thought, okay, this is a really good opportunity to help people. So the initial like use of my writing as sort of a business function was all about publishing and like helping to get the word out and attract writers and stuff. When I started getting offered money to write content, it would be like email content, and I'd be like, I don't even know what the context is for what I'm doing here. I'm just writing this. Or I'd be given like a spreadsheet with, just like 300 SEO keywords, and it's like, you're going to write an article for each one of these, that, because that's what it was like back then. And over, I'd say, the first year of running that agency, I went from just doing what they're telling me to like understanding what's happening. And at the time, that was right when the Panda algorithm update came out. Like, I started the company in 2011. That was the year that the Panda algorithm update came out. One of my earliest customers was a very, very big SEO firm. And there's still big SEO firms today, but like not like there was back then. It felt a little bit like Mad Men meets Silicon Valley, right? Like these kinds of like rocket ride, like huge explosive unicorn agencies where they're like, we just went from 5 to 180 people in 3 months, and we've got some of the biggest brands in the world who are paying us to get them on the top of search results. And of course, everything we're doing is like explicitly not something Google wants us to do, and they just figured out the tech to kill us for doing it, and that's what this Panda algorithm update is. So like it was a really weird time to get started, because in the first like year or two of doing the content, I watched like digital marketing kind of go through its hardest growing pains, right? Like you start seeing advertising coming into social media, you start seeing SEO become something that's a little bit more sophisticated. And you start seeing like all these digital marketing automation tools coming onto the market. So like, I feel like I picked a perfect moment to get involved, because the transition from I'm just writing content to this content is serving a broader role in this business and helping them to find and educate their customers and, just be part of a conversation rather than just advertising to people. Like that really appealed to me. So even though I've been doing marketing and I had an agency that's been my life for 15 years now, it was always the storytelling, education, like meet people where they are rather than shoving ads in their face side of things that I was really, really interested in. And that's kind of the path my career's gone down. So it lends itself to the whole storytelling thing very nicely, I think.
And then you talked about your agency and also, being very entrenched in what was going on with SEO. Like, what do you feel was the biggest change in is this something that we've only had the last couple of years that's made these things change, or is this something a little bit earlier in regards to these SEO companies and these behemoths, because SEO mattered so much and people were just investing into a lot of it, and so therefore, getting a stable of writers and folks that understood the technical side of rolling these things out and were, finding hacks to be able to like work the algorithms, and then that sort of changed as you were just describing. Is that all just due to the recent stuff going on with AI, or was there something else that you think you witnessed that was starting to make that happen?
No, it's not all because of AI. Like, certainly the last 4 years or so have been their own kind of arms race with Google. But like, I feel like the teens, like that decade, the definition of SEO and how it evolved was arms race. I mean, it was literally like someone figures out cheap, easy way to like force good rankings. And so like, okay, let's talk about the role that I played in it, because I think this is interesting, especially for any of your listeners who haven't been in this industry for a long time. So we would get hired by like, let's say a large SEO agency. And let's say they have, Circuit City as a customer, because that company existed back then. And Circuit City is selling appliances and electronics and things like that. And at the time, there was only so much you could do to optimize your website to drive better traffic. Like backlinks were the thing. And, I would argue now they're not at all, but back then they were the only thing. And so what these agencies would do is they'd go out and they'd hire writing resources like me and my team of writers and say, you are going to write a bunch of content targeting all of these keywords that Circuit City wants to go after. And actually at the time, even I would think, whoa, we're writing content for Circuit City. This is cool stuff, right? And then what would happen is somebody else, another team, is in the background somewhere, and they're building a website that never existed before called refrigeratorfanatics.com or something like that. And all of this content we're writing about refrigerators for sale is going on this third-party website that's literally being built for no other reason than to just drive link after link after link after link to the Circuit City website. So like, that wasn't storytelling. You know what I mean? That wasn't human on any level. There was no, like, they didn't care what we wrote because they didn't expect anyone to ever read it. Like, it was literally just there so that there were these like really basic signals that Google could say, okay, this person's an authority because they have bad technology because it's 2011. So 2011, Google says, this is something we could programmatically spot. Like, we can see when a website's been created, has no real traffic, is literally only linking to this one thing. So let's kill it. We're going to kill that. And so like, I watched as the work that I was a part of led to this company just completely, I mean, within a year or two, they were destroyed. There was nothing left because they're in major lawsuits with with these big clients who had gone from like paying these exorbitant rates to being at the top to now they're not only not at the top, but they're being like throttled and blacklisted by Google because of these practices. And I feel like from there, all of that decade is an example. It's just like a history of, okay, loophole found, loophole closed, loophole found, loophole closed, and you can name so many different SEO tactics that people to this day think matter a whole lot. And at the end of the day, they don't. And I think part of that is because in the last 4 or 5 years, two things have happened. Number one, just all website technology has gotten so much more sophisticated. Like, it's far rarer for a business to start up these days and like build their own website, in SharePoint or with Dreamweaver or something than it is to just like use WordPress, man. Just use WordPress or just use HubSpot or just use Wix or something. And these modern CMSs are built with like everything you need from a technical standpoint to really do fine, right? So like a lot of conversation around technical SEO, we don't hear it anymore. And there's people who still make money on it, and so there's still conversation around it, but like it's just a lot easier to kind of be good, And then on the other side of thing, Google's tech has gotten really, really good. It understands context better than ever. Like when people search for things, Google really cares about where they're at in a journey. It's not about just funnels even, it's their own unique journey. And Google spends a lot of time investing in what they think, people are going to do next as they're searching for information. And AI is part of that as well. It's the very tail end of that, though. I think it's changed because of the context, and the technology has gotten to a point where it's just better. AI is part of that. It's not the whole thing.
Where I know where it went, but I want the listeners to understand. So we've got the agency. Where does the agency end up? Where do you go from there? What's the next step in your journey?
So I did my agency Metonymy Media for over 10 years. And I ended up being one of the first customers of a company called DemandJump. They had figured out a way of analyzing search engine results pages themselves as a source of data for SEO. And using that kind of data, I was able to, over the next 4 years or so, really develop a completely different way of thinking about SEO that is much more storytelling driven, that's much more focused on the human being that's on the other side of the page and what their needs are. And I called it pillar-based marketing, and published a book on it. Adam wrote, what did you write? You wrote something.
I think I wrote something that's on the back cover, the inside cover, and you were nice enough to mention me in the acknowledgments as well.
Yeah. It was an exciting time. It was a lot of fun putting that together and getting it out there. But it's been a lot. Like, I spent 2 years after publishing that book, touring all over North America, speaking to crowds about this and really creating a market around this notion of pillar-based marketing. So, I went from sort of banging my head against SEO the same way all of these old big agencies used to being in a place where I felt like the tech's gotten better, Google's tech's gotten better, the end reader in any industry has gotten more sophisticated, more able to self-educate and find the information they need. And it's just all come together into now, what I'm doing day to day is just helping businesses understand exactly what their markets care about and help them make good decisions with their content and their content strategies to make sure they're telling the right stories in the right ways and structuring them correctly on their website, not just for humans, but for all the algorithms and all of the LLMs and other things that are starting to ingest content and drive traffic on the organic front. So I'm really just thinking about organic as a whole. And this is where we're at.
Yeah, I remember because I think I can't remember. I think we were working with DemandJump before you came on board, and I think we were. And then when you came on board, things changed. And I'd been doing SEO with our company for quite some time, but we were not solely an SEO company, and so we had sort of a selective philosophy on how to make an impact that very much was trying to be future-proof. Right? We were trying not to hack anything that would then essentially undo the work that we were doing, but set folks up for sort of longer-term sustainable success. And when you and I got introduced, and then you guys had your DemandJump sort of university, and you sort of sharing your methodology around things, I think it was one weekend where I just sort of cracked it open and I took a look at it, and I was like, oh, this definitely feels right. Like this feels, based on my experience, it felt like the right direction to go, the right thing to do for all the right reasons, right? And so we definitely, like, I was the first to get certified through your certificate. I mean, this was, I think, even as you were just kind of doing a prototype of the system, like you were actually still even going to rework, I think, the content of it, but I was the first one to get certified. I think my team was the first agency as a whole to get certified. And we very much, so that obviously tells you a lot about how I felt once I sort of saw the vision of it. And, it sort of had some of the flavors of some of the old things, but also it was paired with a fresh look at how the data should be, sort of analyzed to properly kind of structure everything. And then it was, putting things together based on real, like, human customer data and information, besides just keywords, which, like, to your point of everything being much more sophisticated, and just looking at keywords alone is a real short-changed, weird way of looking at things, just if that's the only way you're looking at it. And so really loved it and got behind it, and absolutely believed in that in a big enough way for us to put time and resources into it. And then you went to put together the book to really explain it to everybody, just like you were describing. How has that evolved over time? Do you feel the book is still relevant? What do you feel about the way things have moved since? How long has it been since you wrote the book? 2 years?
Did we publish in 23? I think we published in 23. Yeah, we would have published March of 23. So been about 2 years, almost exactly now. Yes, I think so. It's a mixed bag of relevance, right? Like, I'm not with DemandJump anymore. The company has been sort of in limbo, shutdown / asset sale acquired, things like that. And so it's been kind of all over the place from that standpoint. But when it comes to so the point I'm making is that the book itself talks about that product. Like, it talks about that specific product. And, like, for an example of how this might work, take a look at this product, and that product doesn't look anything like what it looked like then. And so it's evolved and come a long way. But in terms of, like, the methodology it teaches, right? Like, that core, like, what is pillar-based marketing? What are the mindset shifts you need to go through in order to really start being more successful with SEO and to stop wasting so much time, effort, and energy? It's still very relevant, and it has continued to maintain relevance over the years, to the point where, like, I've only been out on my own for a month now with my consulting agency, and I've had multiple conversations with people who are super, super interested in, like, generative optimization, like generative engine optimization. I think they're forcing the word engine in there, so GEO, right? GEO. Which just gagged me with the spoon. But anyway, because you can't really, like, these people, like, it's just sort of like Google. Like, what I find interesting about this whole industry is, like, we're all just playing these games where like we don't really know the rules. Like sometimes we're given these vague understandings of the rules, but like the rules can change at any moment, and the specific details of the rules, if anyone tells you they know exactly what they are, they're lying, unless they're talking about the algorithm leak from last year, which confirmed so much about what I've been saying for the last 4 years or so. Like everything that I've gotten up and given presentations about like why, if you're investing in backlinks and domain authority, you're wasting your time, is there's no reason to do it anymore. Google algorithm leaks, yeah, okay, they're paying attention to it because they have been for a long time, but they don't care about it anywhere near as much as they care about your grasp on like a topic on your website. They are much more confident in their ability to look at your content and how you organize it and make quality judgments based on that than they used to be, which is why they used to need the sort of stand-in metric of a link to show that somebody values this piece of content, right? They don't need that anymore. And so sort of with that same concept in mind, the LLMs don't need it either. They don't need somebody else to tell them what looks to be the best source to use in explaining to somebody how to accomplish something or how to learn more about something. They make their own decisions based on everything that they're seeing. And what I found is, because pillar-based marketing really takes this like structured, nested approach to developing content and making sure that your content on your website is linked together behaviorally very similarly to how Google understands the market to behave, it leads to both Google's AI and other AI systems really, really liking the content. So there's companies that I've worked with since like on the methodology as explained in the book. I've been working with them since 2020, 2021. And as soon as, AI started, entered into the search results experience last year, I found that those companies that had been doing that work with me for a long time, they were all of the terms they were targeting and ranking for, they were the ones showing up in the generative results, as the source for that. And while I was at DemandJump, I oversaw the development of hundreds and hundreds of pieces of content across several pillars. And I noticed the last month or so that I was there that it was either number 2 or number 3 traffic source had gone from, the usual suspects to openai.com. And I don't have visibility to that because I can't go check the search results and see what happens. So even there, because of the time horizon, because of the volume of content we've done, because of the way it was built and structured, we found that the AIs really liked our content. And so I've been talking to people who have been following my methodology, and because I'm a free agent now for the first time, they want to talk to me and see if I can work with them and help them. And I'm hearing the same thing from other people as well. Which means that, like, in the current arms race, if we want to use that metaphor again, of, hey, how do you make sure that you're a part of the conversation that your consumers are having with these AI LLMs and whatnot, it seems to be working pretty well. I'm pretty happy with it, and I think it's going to be a more central part of, like, my value proposition moving forward.
What do you think? What do you think when the rubber meets the road right now is something that marketing leaders should be paying attention to? Given the direction that SEO, AI, and content, let's say for the sake of content marketing, right? Not just for SEO, but broader content marketing. Because I think that's when folks are doing content just for the sake of SEO, I think they miss out. When SEO becomes a good integral integrated part of what they're doing for content marketing, I think that's even better. And then when that dovetails into, content marketing's role in like lead capture and demand gen and stuff, that's even better as well. What do you think that marketing leaders, should they be, like, I've had a few folks come to me and say, Adam, should I even be paying attention to SEO these days? And should I be doing this? Should I instead be trying to figure out my AI game, or just focusing my money in some other place in order to make an impact, because SEO is just going to have drastically diminishing returns? What are your thoughts on that?
Good questions. So first of all, SEO is not anything that I would stop investing in anytime soon. It's changing, but I think what's changing is the channel, or the percentages balance between, how much is coming to me through Google, how much is coming from other search engines or from generative AI sources, or whatever the case might be. that's shifting, and it's shifting in real time to the extent that anyone who says this is exactly what you should do doesn't know what they're talking about, because in 6 months, the landscape of AI and what it's capable of will be very different. And like, I mean that. I've been waiting for the moment when agentic AI becomes very, very common, which Sam Altman at OpenAI says for them it'll be by the end of this year. And they tend to be the canary, right? Like, once they brought it to market, it seems to be like accessible enough to the general market where people start using it. And so there's going to come another wave here by the end of the year where there's going to be a lot of people, especially like those decision maker executives, people who are very busy, have a lot of, draws on their time. They're going to start using agents to do sort of research for them or find summaries of what to do for them. And so like being a part of the conversation, whether it's, you see what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't matter if I'm optimizing for a page that I think this executive themselves is searching for, or it's an agent that's looking for it. I need to be organized. So for me, doing SEO and developing that written content, it's just the beginning part of doing market research and establishing sort of, this is our index of authority. This is what we think we are experts in and our perspective on it. From there, it's all about how you engage and connect with the market. And so like, I was talking to a really smart guy that I've known for years earlier today named Tim Hickle. Look him up, Hickle, if you're needing some marketing help in general. But he was making a point to me that I thought was really, really brilliant, that up until like right now, the moat has been tech. Like, right, like a business can sort of defend itself from competition by having the best tech. And you have all like this whole tech world is based on, you need money from VCs so that you can spend money on really, really expensive engineers and tech resources and things like that, so you can build the technology to do things better than the next guy. In general, that's done now. That's no longer true. Like, anybody with even a remote understanding of product management, or what the purpose of Python is versus what the purpose of HTML is versus what the purpose of CSS is. Like, you don't have to know how to read or write those things. You just have to understand on a high level how these things work together. If you have a vision and a role in the market, you can make yourself more efficient or smarter very, very easily with AI. And so what are the moats then? Like, what are the things that defend you from competition? It's number one, are you somebody worth trusting? Like, are you somebody worth caring about? Like, do you have actual relationships with people in the space that you're doing work? Used to be, it was the person with the best tech got the work. So like, you'd have these like, ERP companies in these industries, and the people running them maybe have nothing to do with that industry, but because they built the tech, they're the leader and they're the thought leader. Now it's like, okay, you built the tech and it's expensive, but I could do that myself. So who cares? Like, I need somebody who's actually a thought leader who understands the market and has some rapport with it. And then number two, how do I deploy what I have? Like, whatever services I'm selling or products or whatever, how do I get from I know people in the market to they're looking at my stuff? So SEO and just the thought of thought leadership is going to be more crucial now than ever. Is it going to always take the form of you're developing a certain number of articles that you're publishing to get to the top of search rankings? No. But if you're trying to go to market in 2025 and you are trying to go to market solely based on like how cool your offering is, how easy it is, how many articles you pumped out from an AI to get to the top of search rankings, I think you're going to have a harder time actually getting into the market, getting where you need to be. Like, you could be Tim Cook saying the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go like work on AI. And for a lot of people who are in the industry, that alone makes sense. Like, oh, we know who Tim Cook is. That's great. But like, if you don't know who Tim Cook is, then you're not paying attention. You don't care. He's got the same problem everybody else has, which is it's a crowded market. Everybody has access to tech. That's not an advantage in and of itself. So how do I stand out and how do I become different? I'm aware of how rambling this sounds, and it's partially because I'm trying to like, this is something that nobody knows what the future looks like. But to me, doing good market research so you understand what questions your market is asking, so that you, with your unique perspective, your unique experience, expertise, can come and bring them, educational content, storytelling, all sorts of different things that'll not just show and demonstrate your value, but also give them solutions before they're even buying from you. Like, that's going to be more important than ever. And I view content marketing as part of the solution, not necessarily part of the marketing stack. It is part of the marketing stack, but at the end of the day, it's the first step in the solution you're providing to the public, and you need to really invest in that.
It's not rambling at all. There's a whole bunch of stuff wrapped in there, and some things that it reminds me of, and some things that I heard, right? And so, one of the differentiating factors is not, like you said, going to be the technology. It is like who you are. What do you stand for? How do you connect the dots? What is your reputation from a trust and a confidence perspective? These are things that can't be reproduced by AI in any way. And then in addition to that, there's been a lot of discussion around what type of searches are being impacted most by AI, and the data shows that simple kind of question and answer sort of searches tend to be the ones that are most easily answered by an AI. But once you get a bit deeper, and then in the navigational ones tend to be when folks that are just using search for navigation, they tend to not really care for using AI to do that. It's not really. I remember when I was starting to use ChatGPT for search for ChatGPT, where I would normally just type in a web address in order to find it, because when it took over my search in my browser, I would normally just be able to type in something, and if I don't just get it to pop up on my browser, at least it came up in a search result on my browser, and I would navigate to it. And generative search doesn't do a great job at that. I think that they'll try to fix it down the line, because eventually folks will probably kind of replace their behavior with search engines with that. But that there's certain types of searches where the bottom line is, if you stop creating content, you are not going to show up. You don't exist at that layer. You don't influence the story. You don't influence the content. Like, the generative results are generated from content, from some an aggregate of content across multiple sources, sometimes even just one source. And so if you want to be a part of the conversation, like to your point, it doesn't mean that the end result is a human being seeing the search result, but it could be that it's an agent or a generative engine utilizing your content in its responses, which then of course influences buyers or influences the people that are looking at solutions or trying to find answers to questions and problems. And then kind of lastly, that in a way, if we look at this in a real simplistic term around, are we just going to see traffic go down or up? If we just look at it in that way, it's oversimplifying the fact that this is behavior that's just changing. The reason a website exists is changing. The way people are finding information is changing. So the paradigm of what your website does in the long term is just different than it's been for the last 10 or 20 years. To your point of, your website is likely going to be a place where you're trying to build trust and confidence in a way that you can't just do in straight text results, but it may not be the information hub or the first or second touch point or even third touch point for your customers that it has been over the last few years, because of how much of that information is either coming into a search engine, to a generative tool or generative search engine, enabled AI enabled search tool like ChatGPT or Perplexity or whatever, or how much is being brought in through social, like how much people are now spending time in communities and on social, and most of that, the whole zero-click aspect of content as well. But when you create that content, as you're describing, that content isn't just built for search engines. The way that you build it with pillar-based, marketing, is you're building content that is needed, relatable, answers questions, it's addressing the needs of your customer regardless of where it's housed ultimately.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Let me tell you a story about like where I got a big mindset shift that helped me see the purpose of like audience and behavior research. And I don't say keyword research necessarily, but that might be part of it. How that changed in my mind back in 2020. I was working with a company that their market was pharmaceutical companies. So if reports start coming out that there's this new virus they're calling the Zika virus, this is the company that would put someone on a plane with all their, collection equipment and go down to the source, and they'd get samples, and then they'd bring them back, create the inert samples needed to send to the pharmaceutical companies so they could start developing the therapies, right? Well, they happened to be people that went to Wuhan in late 2019, early 2020, and apparently the FDA came to them and said, "Hey, just so you know, like we think you guys might have been the first people in America to develop an actual test for COVID-19," and it was part of their normal process of just, well, we're going to make these inert samples, and then we have to give our customers who are buying them the ability to test for them, to identify them, right? So they weren't even trying to solve the problem of, hey, we need to start testing the mass market for COVID-19 fast. But the way they told it to me is it sort of felt like the 40s, like the government comes to a warehouse or a plant and says, guess what? You're making tanks now. You're done making, slides or whatever it is you do. And so they kind of were like told, you need to go to the market. So all the places where they were physically located where they could do this, they were being asked to just set up massive testing facilities and sites. And all of a sudden, they had this impetus from the government. Hey, we'll pay you $75 a pop or whatever it is per test that you do. So they need to start driving foot traffic. So they're, we meet, we start talking, and we realize that like we could develop content around COVID-19 testing specifically for them. It was a whole complicated thing. They were not prepared to do something like this or to be B2C facing at all. So we had to like build them a blog and get them ready to go. And by the time we were done, we published, I don't know, a couple dozen pieces of content around this. And, we're running data, looking and seeing, once we publish this, where is this coming from? And we literally within 4 or 5 hours, we're seeing traffic coming to their website after we publish this stuff, and we cannot for the life of us figure out what. So we finally get access to some analytics to look at it. Turns out that they weren't ranking, and they weren't ever going to rank in Google, because we had started Googling some of the terms that were driving the traffic according to Google Search Console, and we couldn't find anything. It turns out that all of their traffic was coming from Yahoo and Bing and DuckDuckGo. So like while Google was whitelisting COVID-19 results, so you had to be on their list or they weren't even going to try to rank you, all these other ones were not, and they were starved for real content about this topic because it was the hottest thing right now and nobody was really publishing it. So we were able to get in and out, but we were using data from Google is the point that I'm making, right? We were looking at Google results in order to drive what we did. The project, if we had known that there was a whitelist, we would have thought it would be a failure from the start. We never would have even done it. We would have said, well, what's the point? Because we're just looking at Google. But we realized when we published all that stuff that, hey, there's a ton of traffic coming from elsewhere. And like, when you think about like the demographics of the people who are going to be the first to be worried about COVID-19 and want to get tested, you see that these people are still using Yahoo, right? Like they're still like some of these are an older population. Maybe their behavior is a little different. And just that one experience taught me, there is a difference between like utilizing the behemoth behavior processor that is Google to understand how people are learning and searching about things, and then using that data to develop content for a variety of purposes, some of which you might not even understand yet. We didn't know when we were developing content 5 years ago that it would become content that is seeding the initial launches of all of these LLMs that people are interacting with. And yet here we are. And because we know the future is digital, because we know that it's going to continue to develop along these digital data hierarchy sort of like pathways, I think continuing to leverage data properly and think critically about how you're not just making decisions about what to develop, but how you're organizing your thoughts so that human beings, technological agents or whatever can look at that content and understand who you are and appropriately place value upon your perspective in your content compared to everybody else who's out there in the market saying the same thing. It's just so important. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you were talking about that.
Ryan, before we wrap up, this is the chance where you get to flip it around and just get to ask me one question as we wrap up the episode here today and we find out where to stalk you and find out more about you. Do you have a question for me at all?
Man, I didn't know I was going to have to come up with a question for you. Well, I guess you've been doing the agency thing for a long time. I'm back in the consulting now. I was on the, tech company side and I was doing the agency thing before. If you would say, and this isn't for you listeners, although you're going to learn from it, this is for me. I'm taking this advantage for me. In the last 5 years, what's changed? Like when you're talking to prospects who need help, is there a difference in how they want to buy and engage with you as an agency? Is it, are you still doing the same sorts of packages and models and services you were doing 5 years ago? Does it look drastically different? For example, where you might have used to do a lot of retainers, or companies more like, I want to do project-based work, or are people more interested in, much more specifically on like specific tactics and the ROI on those tactics, or how's the market changed?
Yeah, good question. So a couple things that pop up, which is, and we've also had to make some changes, I think, as well. And there's been almost like a perfect storm of, AI, election, just sort of things in the marketing side of things, just changing as a whole. People's behavior and expectation around certain industries we work with has all been changing to the point where there's a bit of them looking for more like, let's try some bite-sized things first before we go for the big package. We work with folks on a regular recurring basis. A lot of our clients, we were just recently doing sort of an analysis that, on average, we work with folks for an average of 3 years. We have some folks more, some folks less. We have a couple clients we worked with for 10 years. But on average, it's about 3 years. But you have to have folks that have that need for what we do because of the spread of what we do, right? And I think it's a little bit different if you're somebody who does a very specific thing. It might be a little bit different because it's actually in some ways harder to get your foot in the door when you do a variety of things, because a lot of folks don't initially, like, they feel that they're piecing together a team or solution or a list of vendors to do all those things. They don't always know that you can kind of go one place to get a majority of those things tackled. And so getting your foot in the door often, now more than ever, I think, feels like, especially due to what I just described, as well as just trying to like build trust with somebody, starts off with a smaller step than it has in the past. I think that folks with their budgets are a little bit more skittish than they've been. I think the ones that are marketing leaders are getting are kind of being like looked at from above more in a different way than they have in previous years. And so therefore those marketers are a little bit more careful about the dollars they're putting forth. And as we're recording this today, like, we're dealing with all kinds of economic issues due to tariffs and all kinds of stuff, which is bringing up a lot of turbulence and uncertainty. So it exacerbates all the stuff that I'm describing. And then I think the other thing is marketers definitely need to keep talking in the language of outcomes versus outputs, right? More often than they have in the past. So, just as an example, and depending on how to be, like, a lot of what you were doing with writing was technically outputs. And then ultimately, as you continue to learn that space more and more and more, and talk about what you are doing with pillar-based marketing, and even how we describe pillar-based marketing, like, that is about outcomes, right? It's having an output. Those outputs are ultimately mapped to outcomes. And when you map those, like, again, when you're driving traffic and you have that network of content and map on things like other sort of down funnel assets, lead capture mechanisms, other ways of engaging with folks and building up trust, now that you've grabbed their attention for this content that you've built out, you are ultimately driving outcomes, which is in that case growing the customer base and growing the business and growing the bottom line for the business. So I think those are the two things that stand out to me. Is I think trust right now, due to everybody's skittishness, is I think try to select some things that let you get your foot in the door with some smaller cases and create a clear line to how you would then build that into either something reoccurring or something bigger down the line. And then on the flip side, speaking from the point of the outcomes that you're helping people, even for us on our website, I was just talking yesterday with somebody about our website talks about, I think all of these little things were shiny objects back in the day. When somebody heard SEO, they thought SEO solves their problems, and they might not have any clue technically what SEO does, but somebody just said, you should do SEO. You should do Google Ads.
Yeah, that's big in SEO. I've encountered that so much over the years. Like, everyone says I should do it. I don't really know what it is or why. But,
and in this case, I think it's different. I think those things, that mindset is diminishing a bit for, I would say, probably the mid-market and up. And what those folks are interested in is, I don't care what you do. What I care about is the outcome. And so you tell me what I should do. What is the outcome that I should try to accomplish, or to tell me how to reach the outcome that I'm trying to accomplish, and from there, I think that's where the best sort of top marketers are positioned, are folks that can really speak to those outcomes and then help make those happen.
Agreed. That's good insight, and it sort of jives with what I've seen very, very recently. And to your point, to like sort of close that loop on what you said, it's a lot easier to point to, this is going to be the outcome I'm going to get for you, and earn the trust when you're just focusing on like one outcome, right? Like when you're just trying to go in and say, well, all of your marketing is going to be better, that's a really hard case to make. But when you say, give me the trust enough to do this one thing and I'm going to blow your socks off and you're going to get this result, then the conversation becomes a lot different.
Take it a bite at a time. Gone are the days of what do you call it? I'm not going to say folks did a lot of, over-promising and under-delivering, but it was a lot easier to just sort of step in and make a big old thing out of it. Like, just start off with something, realistically you can step in and make a big impact on, and then sort of expand, from there to take on a bigger part of the pie. It's all about really trust at that point, building up trust and helping folks with that outcome. But on that note, Brian, so how can people learn about pillar-based marketing, talk to you, that sort of thing?
Yeah, check me out. My new consulting venture is called Pillar & Company. I am the company, and I thought that was a really fun name because it's just, me. But pillar-and-co.com. I'm sure Adam will throw it in the show notes or whatever. And then, look me up on LinkedIn, Ryan Brock, bald and okay with it. I have not been able to be active in discussing PBM there in a long time, but now that I'm doing my thing and getting my business in order here, I'm going to have a lot more time to be dedicated to that, so I plan on doing so. So if you're interested, you want to learn more, follow along there, and definitely check out pillarandco.com, which, by the way, has like 400 words on it. So check it out, see what I have to say, look at my really poorly photoshopped photos of me, and you drop me a line.
It's awesome, man. I knew once I talked to you about your new venture, I wanted to pull you on and talk about this, and you had a lot of influence over the last couple of years on the way that I was looking at a lot of these topics. And it was always cool to be able to call you up and talk shop and kick things around, and I hope you could continue to do that.
Anytime, man. You got my number. Anytime.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining. Take care.
Thanks, Adam.